Guys, and welcome back to my channel where I'm finally giving you a long overdue update on Rex, my pink tongue skink. Last time I did a video was back in September and I'd finally discovered why Rex hadn't been gaining weight. If you want the full story, maybe you're in the same boat, head over to that video, I'll link it below. But basically, once I switched to feeding him live snails, he went from strength to strength. He went from being 4 inches and only 2 grams for like ages to 9.5 inches and 25 grams now. Now, in terms of how big he could get, there's kind of little information, or at least nothing consistent about pink tongue skinks online. So you can either get 18 inches long, 15 to 18 inches, some say only 12 inches long. Weight wise, you get 150 to 300 grams, so as you can imagine, he's got a way to go. But I know it does take about 3 years for them to get fully grown, so him being 25 grams now, he should probably be a bit bigger, because obviously at the beginning there was that time where he wasn't gaining, so he's a little bit behind his siblings. But in terms of his full weight, that can take 3 years. In terms of his enclosure, so like he's currently in an 18 by 18 by 24 inch tank, and I'm already thinking of upgrading him to a 3 by 2 by 2.5 foot tank. I know I'm working in feet and inches, yeah, but he uses his entire tank. He's so active. He will leap, he will climb. As you can tell, the plants are doing well in this tank. I currently use a 35 watt halogen heat lamp, a luminized Pro T5 and a luminized LED bar. I did do a review on these. He's actually had this probably the longest that any pet has, because we were the first to use it a few months back, and it's just working out amazing. Now, I can't remember if I mentioned this in the last update, but one thing I did add in his tank was this cork hollow that kind of sits upwards, and this was really based on some wild observations I'd seen of the pink tongue skink online, and they really seem to like being able to bask around the edge of the hollow and then like hide if they need to. And when I first got him, he was small enough to just sit around the edge. Now he just pops his head out or he sprawls across it, but I'll definitely be adding more and bigger ones in his upgrade. Now, in terms of handling, he is still pretty hissy. This is to be expected, to be honest. I call him a hissy sausage. Yes. Oh! Okay. That's okay. But apparently once they reach about a year or 60 grams, they tend to just suddenly chill out and you can handle them easily. Sometimes I'll get him out and he's absolutely fine. He can still be quite quick, but he will chill, he'll eat from my hand. Other times he'll poop everywhere. One time I went to weigh him and I didn't realise he was shedding, and he pooped and rolled, so he covered himself and me in poop. And trust me, that stuff stinks. Oh, Rex, why'd you do that? Now, in terms of feeding, I still pretty much feed him just snails. I have offered him Omnigold, but he's not really a fan. Though I will say his siblings eat it all the time, so I don't know. Maybe he'll eventually like it. But generally, pink tongue skinks do just eat slugs and snails in the wild. I refuse to give him like ground turkey or cat or dog food. Like, people seem to give their skinks all sorts, and especially with the pet foods that aren't designed for skinks, it can lead to like liver problems, so I'm just sticking to what they eat in the wild. Now, I have spent a small fortune on baby giant African land snails to feed him. I only buy the ones that are for the purpose of being feeders, and I calculated this, and including postage, from September, sort of end of September to mid-December, I have spent £125.60. Now, I have just purchased more that will hopefully last us into the new year, hopefully for a few months, which was an extra £41. So we're looking at £166.60 I have spent over a few months just for this skink. So if you were thinking of getting a pink tongue skink, definitely keep that in mind, and I would definitely recommend breeding your own snails. I am trying to do it. I have about 9 or 10 giant African land snails. They have a massive enclosure now, deep substrate, food on demand, a massive cuttlefish. Haven't had any eggs yet. So I'm really hoping that kicks in soon, otherwise this is this is definitely the most expensive reptile I've ever had to feed. I will never moan about buying a tub of 100 crickets for like £2 or £3. Snails definitely cost a lot more. Now, I had a few questions from you guys and I figured I'd answer some in this video, but I may also do a few like shorts or reels in the future answering them. Now, the first one is, how does he feel? Is he soft? I would say he feels quite like a snake. He's certainly a different texture to my geckos, but very, very smooth, very snake-like. I also had, are they generally hidden most of the time, or is he active wandering around? During the day, he's actually very active. He uses his entire tank. When offering food, I'll even place the crushed snails around the tank, so he has to like seek them out, because I had to look up the most humane way to kill these snails. If I was going to feed him snails small enough for him to crush himself, I would be going through them all the time because they'd be tiny. So I have to crush them. It's the most humane way. I don't want them to be slowly torn apart by Rex. Maybe when he's bigger, he'll be able to deal with it on his own. But this is really quick, hopefully painless. And because of this, I do, as I said, place them around the tank so he has to move and find them. And the other day, I couldn't see him in his tank, so I placed a snail in there, a crushed one, and I started to see these. It was almost like Jurassic Park, like these branches in the tank were moving and you can hear something creeping and crawling, and he appeared. So I assume he has a great sense of smell for snails. And yeah, he's definitely got used to when I feed him and all of that. So the next question is, what's their intelligence like? Can they learn their names, feeding times, etc.? I definitely think there's something going on behind the eyes compared to my geckos. Like, no tea, no shade to my geckos. They are smart, they respond to their name and all of that. But I think his vision's amazing. Like, if I poke my head around the corner to look into the room, like, just to be sneaky, he's suddenly seen me. He's, like, on it. He's smart. He's starting to respond to his name now, but obviously he's still quite cautious of me. But yeah, I would say skinks are quite intelligent. I also had, I've never heard of a pink tongue skink. Just how rare are they? So yeah, it does seem like they aren't very commonly kept. It definitely seems like blue tongue skinks are far more common to find. Sadly, some are still being wild caught, but pink tongue skinks come from the east of Australia, just a section of Australia, and I know Australia doesn't allow their animals to be exported to the pet trade, which I totally respect. So I do wonder whether, similar to Australian blue tongue skinks, whether they're not as common as, say, like the Asian versions. And also, similar to blue tongue skinks, they give birth to their babies and it's more seasonal, and yeah, they don't seem as common. They were definitely a little harder to track down. But one thing I'll say is, like, the most annoying thing about them not being common is just the lack of information out there. So I guess for me, if I find new information that can help anyone else keeping a pink tongue skink, then I will try to share it as much as I can. I do wonder whether there's more Australian keepers of pink tongue skinks, because I believe in Australia you can't import reptiles and stuff, so you kind of keep your own native species. So if you happen to stumble upon this and you're Australian and you keep them, or you've encountered them, let me know some information. I'd love to know more. I'm always open to learn more about these animals. But yeah, overall, Rex is, he's doing great. He's totally different to what I'm used to with my geckos, but in a good way. But I will say, if you were thinking of getting one and you currently own maybe a leopard gecko or crested gecko, I will say the food costs so much more and you constantly have to find new people feeding snails, which can be tricky. This whole process from getting him to gain weight and sort of taming him, it's been a bit of a challenge, but a good challenge, and it's incredibly rewarding. As I said though, I will continue to answer some of your questions via shorts and reels, so make sure you follow me on like Instagram, obviously YouTube, TikTok. I'll leave the links below. But thank you for watching, guys, and goodbye.